So I'll talk about rights and reality and some experience from Tanzania of what we are trying to do. And I'll just very briefly talk about RED in Tanzania, what is happening. I also talk about policy management in Tanzania, the perspective of communities on RED, and also a vision for RED in Tanzania, and some outline of what we are trying to implement. So basically we are pro RED, so we're trying to make RED work. And some of the lessons, and also we end up with some of the relevance in education for the UNHCC. So some of you might know readiness investment in Tanzania. Norway is investing about $75 million in the country, and this is over 5 years, and it's basically supporting civil society to pivot the project and also do some research program. And also we have UN RED investing about $4 million in the readiness, including capacity building. And we see that RED could strengthen the communities' land rights, their capacity to manage their forests. Deforestation rate will increase with contaminant increases in the emission of greenhouse gases and biodiversity loss. So I'm talking especially on the land, on the forest which is under village land. So there are some perspectives on RED. So basically they welcome, we see RED as an opportunity. However, we also realize there are some risks. So some of the opportunities actually to generate cash or income from their forests, and also to move away from slashing the burning agriculture if provided with the necessary capacity, and also to generate funds that could support basic services such as cleaning. So basically actually addressing the issue of poverty in totality. So the other thing is to strengthen the control of the land through land use planning and forest management. So basically land, forest which is under village land could actually strengthen the land tenure. So there are issues which RED has to address. So if they are not considered during the design process or during the implementation, RED is likely to create some threats. So one of which is another land grab. So that is the question actually. Is that RED, is it going to increase or taking away land from communities? So if this is not taken care during the learning process, then it might be a threat. And then on the other hand, and if this forest under village land is left out without any management system, it is likely that it might be open for big investment, like the opening of biofuel plantations. And the other worry is how are we going to feed our families and improve our lives on less land? Yeah, so basically actually once we're setting out land for either community-based forest management in a direct way, has not invested in a village since independence. So the question will become, will they really release the RED fund to the village? So basically what I'm saying is, if this RED fund comes to the government, would the government be willing to release the fund to the communities? Because the experience shows that the government has never forwarded money to the communities. So, and even if they reach our community leaders, what is to stop them from stealing it? Yeah, this is the issue of also governance, because you find some leaders who they can use that opportunity to take that money on their advantages. And the other thing, I think, maybe it's positive, but once you protect forests, you are likely to increase population of animals, and that might create problems So there are some visions which are also going to go very quickly on that. So it is likely that revenue will flow direct to the communities that own the forest, if that is considered during the designing process. And also there is the issue of recompensation, is equal or greater than the cost, including the opportunity cost. So if the fund from or the compensation of red. So these are just the two sites which we are demonstrating. One is in the north.
COP13 in Bali, so they decided to make red as a plus with conservation, enhancement of carbon stock, and sustainable forest management. And in the Indonesian policy scheme, we have red plus facilitated through issuance of 3 ministerial decree, and there are several demonstration activities that's already ongoing since Bali. This is several demonstration activities. It's not all, because if I mention all, it wouldn't fit the PowerPoint. So many, and we are looking deeper on the red plus issue. Still becoming a mysterious scheme because nobody knows how it will end up like, because in the UNFCCC still not being a decision yet. And then there are several issues that need to be considered when looking at red. The first one is policy framework and fulfillment of rights. Second, financing and monetary flows. And then technical aspect related to forest management. This is in the Indonesian region. You can see there's a lot of conflict between the industrial timber and then palm oil plantation and production forests. So, the policy framework, many developing countries still facing the problem of sectoral approach. Yes, Indonesia also become one of the countries that facing the problem. Disharmonized policy concerning the forestry and other sectors. Yesterday night, my friend here, Taufik, also present some problem that a disharmonized policy in Indonesia is still happening. So this gave big opportunity for deforestation activities. Some of the conflicts of the policy making deforestation more high. And then fulfillment of rights. This is also a problem because forests and people, especially in Indonesia, are inseparable. And they live within and around the forest area. Many of these people don't even know about RED. We have several activities, the learning circles within the communities, and all of the learning circles said that none of the communities know what is RED, what is climate change, and what is happening with their life, even in the RED area. So if some of us heard about Ulumasen area, Ulumasen is something that they never know, even they live inside the Ulumasen. So that's something quite fun. Could RED ensure and clarify the conflict of tenure problem in Indonesia? That's a question that we need to answer. Financing and monetary flows. This is the big terror in Indonesia, it's the big C, corruption. And RED will involve $1 billion, even more. How could we tackle the big C? We know that the recent case of Indonesian corruption is very embarrassing. We have like thousands of cases that never been solved. So this needs to be emphasized when we're looking at RED and the money. Transparency, accountability, and reliability is still becoming a challenge in many developing countries, including Indonesia. And then the last but not least, technical aspect related to forest management. Thus, RED could tackle the underlying causes of deforestation. Still a question. RED Plus could potentially change the natural forest, becoming palm oil plantation. Yes. Why? I will explain later. This is one of the commitment of Indonesia. Okay, I heard slower there. Commitment of Indonesia regarding to RED. This is in the G20 meeting, 25 September 2009. Our president said that we are devising an energy mix policy including LULUCF, blah blah blah, come from forest-related issues such as forest fire and deforestation. So forest will become a focus of our president. And the second commitment is a 2-year suspension on all new concession for conversion of peat and natural forests. Letter of intent in Norway, 26 May 2010. Good, we have to applaud for this. But the true face of RED Plus, is reducing emission from an offset mechanism will answer all the challenge. So if RED is reducing deforestation, reducing emission, so any plant, any palm oil plantation could RED. H is human security. Become very important in looking at on RED. because red should guarantee respect, the fulfillment, and protection of basic human rights. Information access, participation access should not become an offset mechanism, because this is truly unfair if red becoming an offset. Land tenure. We know that the land tenure conflict happening all over Indonesia and all over the developing country. This should be the agenda of red to solve this problem. If red could not solve this problem, then saying goodbye to red. Peace, production, consumption. We need to understand that red will reduce the production of timber. So could we handle this, and especially in the developed world, Mr.? They should. Public space for public participation are often the only token. So it's just public participation, but not real, genuine public participation to the village level. CSF strategy, online, this is together with Greenpeace. You can see at their website. And thank you. This is our website. Thank you.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Strategy to 3 acres can go for annual crops. So from that, this thing we can see both in one form. Now to start farming, it is possible to really create food security, and also it is possible to secure sustainable livelihood for the small and marginal farmers, and it can be eco-friendly. I would just like to add here one more thing about the food security, because we are talking about the food. I think we believe that the farmers have to produce their own food, and they have to produce more food for others also. But unfortunately now, under the present mode of agriculture, under the Green Revolution, what we have created in India is that we have created a few pockets of food production. The whole of India gets food from a few pockets like Punjab, Haryana, and then some coastal belts in Anantapur. Maybe there are 3-4. This is really disastrous. And this food travels. If you come to Anantapur, if you eat a chapati, that chapati, the wheat has traveled almost 3,000 kilometers from Punjab. 3,000 kilometers travel. Can you imagine what it is causing in terms of transport, in terms of carbon that it releases, and so on. It is totally avoidable. I think it is real. And now I heard yesterday and day before yesterday, nowadays there are some so-called experts arguing food producing countries. They think that only some countries are suitable to produce food, only those countries can produce food, and all populations from all countries can eat. I think this is, to tell you, this is a first recipe that we can have. I think we should have highly decentralized food production. Each family should have food sovereignty, and they should produce food, more food. And also, the food is not only rice and wheat like we have in India and public distribution system, where only food is limited to rice and wheat, only 2 foods. But that is not really nutritionally sufficient. So when we go in for really millets and vegetables and fruit crops, the food can be highly nutritious, balanced, and it can really promote good health for all people and also for cattle. Another mention I would like to make about this integrating the cattle. We have not been able to do so much so far is because the cattle now, the Green Revolution has promoted are Murrah buffaloes, Jersey cows, and so on. They are all really very big animals. I do not know if you have seen small farmers. Small farmers, they live in huts. One hut is not enough for the one animal. One animal cannot get into their hut also because they are so big. And then this small farmer has to go around maybe 10-15 miles to bring fodder for this big white elephant that is there in his hut. And that is actually very disastrous for the small farmers and also disastrous for the environment. On the other hand, we have local animals which can go even onto the hillocks. They are small in size and they are very agile, and they can walk, climb up and down and then come back. They eat all over in the common CPRs, what we call common property resources, in the tank beds and hillocks. Then they come back and they can give milk. They can also give cow dung for the farms and so on. And and whatever crop is grown, crop residue is there as a fodder, because there is a good integration between crops that farmer grows and animals that grow. But if we have those big exotic animals, the water that comes, dry water that comes is not suitable. So the point that I am trying to make is that we must be looking at what kind of animals we promote. If we can promote animals that are really sensitive and adapted to local conditions, then they will do a lot good to the environment and also to the family's economy. So I think, this is the only point that I would like to make, that agriculture is very local specific, location specific and farmer specific. And there are opportunities, there are options for every land, every type of farmer. And we must try to really make use of those opportunities rather than universalizing and straitjacketing and one size fits all kind of approach, which is being followed now. Thank you very much.
That is going to say, well, so how do we get there from where we have now? And just some thoughts before we have a bit of a debate on this.
Right. Thank you, Rachel. I think I'm in a really good position to sum up what all the previous three speakers have presented here. It's about the moving towards an agroecological food production system and how we need to move there. So during the next 10 minutes or so, I would like to talk about what's the policy choice we have towards this changing system, and what are the main pillars of this food policy that is appropriate under the current circumstances, and how we need to redirect, especially our agricultural research, and how we can making the market works for poor small producers, or I would say how the markets can work better for these people. And finally, I would like to talk, what are the roles of each and every stakeholder, including you, me, government, NGOs, and what we can do towards this transition of an appropriate agroecological food production system. So, if we're talking about making a policy choice, there are two options that we have. One is that, if I quote Malla, he calls something called HIDA, high input destructive agriculture, or what we call the normal agriculture that most of the countries are practicing, or we go to a resilient, knowledge incentive, food provision focused agriculture. And there are so many people have been researching on this, and we heard so many things. And recently, the International Assessment of Agricultural Knowledge, Science and Technology for Development report have says the answer is that business as usual is not going to work for us. I'm repeating what Andrew said. It's not going to work for us. So what we need to do, we need to put that hunger and poverty at the center of the food and agriculture policy, because that's going to cater our need in this changing world. And also, the food policy might be able to feed the increasing population using environmentally sustainable technologies and processes. And I want to talk about what are the 4 pillars which will hold the best food and agriculture policy that will work. One pillar is justice. Justice for people who are producing food for many number of people in this world. Those are the small producers. So the right for food should be the highlight of a food and agriculture policy. The second pillar is the sustainability. Sustainability is not only the environmental sustainability, it's not economical sustainability, but also the social and cultural sustainability as well. So the needs for food and agriculture is localized, highly localized. We cannot have a blanket approach to the entire world. So we need to respect to this diversity. and respecting to that diversity, I mean, achieving sustainability can be achieved through localized, biodiverse food provision. And the third pillar is about democracy. Democracy can be interpreted as, voice of the majority, but I would say democracy is the voice of all segments in the society, in this world. So all the segments should have right to voice for their policy choice. So the government should be able to consult the small scale and traditional food providers. At the same time, we need to get the active participation of those who are unable to participate in the policy development processes at national or subnational level, because there are barriers. So the platforms are open for enabled, high caliber or empowered groups to change policies. So the final pillar of this sustainable food and agriculture policy should be empowerment. As I told you, in the democracy, there are groups or categories of communities or segments in our society who are not being empowered so that they can't come and voice for their need. So they have been looked as people who need to support continuously. For example, we need to target a policy where the things like food aid should be removed gradually rather than keeping them dependent on these kind of assistance. Told about ecological agriculture, I have never been told about traditional seed varieties or traditional varieties which can withstand the changing climate. Unfortunately, I have been never told by my supervisors. Hopefully they are not here. And so there is a high demand that our research for agriculture should be directed towards this. And now it's not agriculture, it's agribusiness. The entire system works for the profit. Even the so-called agriculture or the agribusiness research is entirely directed for profit-making, high-input destructive agriculture. So we need to divert this research agenda towards a sustainable agriculture system. So it includes diverting resources as well as policy space for such kind of research. And how we can make the market works for these small scale food providers. Because if you get the numbers, the small scale food providers provide food for larger number of people, as per the statistics, if I quote Andrew mentioned in his presentation. Even though there have been large amount of food has been produced in this world, we have millions of people who suffer with food shortage. So there is a problem because this market system has not worked for these small scale producers. How we can make them? One is that we need to make sure that the market system places the hunger at the center. It's not about producing crops and livestock products for profits. We need to feed the population of the world. And also, we need to focus on local food production that go for, local needs first, rather than producing large scale in one area and transporting to several other areas. We need to decentralize this and localize this food production. So it led to a lot of issues that our previous speakers have been talking about. And also regulatory mechanisms to make sure that the local markets, local production is geared towards the local demands, food demand. And at the same time, we need to make sure that the surplus of these small-scale food producers is being given a good price for their produce. So they will sustain their production systems in an economically sustainable way. And nowadays, we are talking about a new campaign called Food Sovereignty. This is a movement for this positive change, which is talking as an alternative for this trade-based, profit-based agriculture or agribusiness, but towards a more sustainable. Make consultation to make it a case that ecological food provision is something that we need to take up, and support this kind of work to shift the research and technology development. And also, we need to avoid lending weight to those who oppose the transition toward empowered and sustainable small-scale food providers. For example, there are big companies, multinational companies who do seed business, fertilizer and pesticide companies, and probably there are certain foundations, I might not name those, but there are certain foundations who are supporting these kind of large-scale providers, but we need to make sure that they are not playing a dominant role there. And also, there are certain local actors also involved who get profits out of promoting this so-called large-scale agriculture. So that also needs to something that we need to control through an advocacy program. And at the same time, the NGOs can challenge the national and subnational policies and legislative frameworks, which need to facilitate transition towards an ecological food provision. And also, the NGOs can support in various activities. I have listed here 4. One is strengthening markets that prioritize linkages between local producers and consumers. So you ensure that the local consumers go for local producers, so the local system is sustainable. And at the same time, we need to support the access to food by the urban communities while ensuring the food providing communities receiving an adequate price for their produce. So the market is working better for small people. And to ensure the local capacities are there for development of local technologies, having local knowledge and relevant skills to face this change, and also ensure the program work that strengthen the methodologies that facilitate this transition to ecological food production. So in summarizing, I would like to say what all we need to do is we need to go back to agriculture from agribusiness. Agriculture is about culture. It's about our living, our society, our whole world. But we have changed it for a business. So we need to go back to agriculture from agribusiness. Thank you very much.
A climate change policy advisor with Practical Action. I work in the UK, and our organisation has been working with smallholder farmers for upwards of 40 years around the world. We've got 8 offices in South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Latin America, and policy change. And what do you think your government, one action that your government could constructively take towards this transition? Now, for Richard, he might decide that actually he needs to talk at an EU level. What should the EU do? So one question is, what should they do? And the next question is, will they do it? What's the likelihood?
Very important, they have to change the agricultural policy, and they have to change the subsidized system of production, and they have to change that all this overproduction is sent to countries abroad. For instance, in West Africa, people are suffering if parts of chicken are exported to these countries, and the local production of chicken and meat cannot compete, in addition to all these health problems that occur. They have to change their policy, that they are not distorting anymore the development of national markets in developing countries.
Thank you. Norway do, what should it do?
Thank you, Rachel. I think that Norway could do 2 things. Norway could come on the right track again concerning development cooperation. We have cut our budgets to the agricultural sector with our cooperating partners. It's down to 3%. It should be up to 10%. We should also go into more active dialogue with our African counterparts, because African governments have signed on to documents saying that they should have at least 20% of the national budgets going into agriculture in the broad sense, but they're not doing so. And the second thing is, of course, that Norway at Cancun and other places should pledge funds and priorities on adaptation, because adaptation, to a certain extent, concerning agriculture, is the emperor's new clothes. It is about better schemes in the field, and we should pledge money towards that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mala, what could the Indian government do?
Yeah. What Indian government could do is, at present, the fertilizer subsidy in India is 1,20,000 crores. I do not know how to put it in millions. It's quite a lot of money. That is the fertilizer subsidy. That subsidy essentially goes to the fertilizer producing companies, and these fertilizers are heavily used by very big farmers, not really small and marginal farmers, hardly any rain-fed farmers. I think the one important thing that they can do is take away the subsidy to those industries and give it directly to the farmers based on their land holdings. I think that will help them to, as an incentive for manufacturing their own fertilizers. That is one thing that we can. The second thing that the government can do is, now there is a very, very high priority for all irrigation and irrigation oriented crops. Paddy, wheat, mulberry, all export oriented also. There is a heavy concentration, and all our policies are made to suit to them. So on the other hand, they can really go in for rain-fed, focus their attention to the rain-fed farming, more for rainwater harvesting, creating more vegetation in the drought-prone areas, and so on.
They're nowhere near implementing it. They're saying, well, it says many things, but basically our government is enthralled to big agribusiness. They're really trying to get genetically modified crops grown in the UK. Their overseas development agricultural research budget tends to go through a system which supports this high-tech agricultural research, and they are very resistant to even understanding the arguments that we presented here today, that actually small-scale farming can feed the world, but it needs to be on a level playing field. It does need that level of support. So with recognising that we face that challenge, I'd like to open the floor to questions. Now, you will, if you're sitting at the back, have to come to a microphone, and there are plenty forward. So there's somebody in the back row who is, there's a roving mic coming. So I'll take the gentleman in one.
Foundation are all promoting this, and they look on and present to farmers what you're saying as Luddites. You're not actually going with the technology of the future. I think that's rubbish, but I think we actually have to address it and challenge it, because that's particularly what urban people in the Philippines think, that this is the way forward. So, I mean, I agree with everything that was said here, but the reality is the big elephant in the room for agriculture is genetically engineered crops.
I think it was Richard that showed it. He was talking about adaptation strategies. Given the situation of climate change in many parts of the world, I believe we should start talking about strategies for survival, because that's what is really going to be at stake in many communities, particularly when we see the difference between what the world needs in order to face climate change and the likely outcome of the politicians discussing up there in the moon. I mean, in the moon palace, you know? Also, in the other slides, when you present these slides, like agriculture is about 16 and 30%, and then transportation, I believe we should look for data, agriculture, and food consumption. Because you see, when I have the food in my plate, a lot of energy is under transportation. under agriculture, under industry, under energy recovery, energy losses. So when we add them up, it's more than half. The agriculture and food is more than half of all the CO2 emitted in the world. Another thing regarding the gentleman from Sri Lanka, one thing I didn't see, perhaps it was there I missed it, is the issue of nutrition. I think that's also very important, not just to feed, but in a nutritious way. And finally, Madam, if you allow me to volunteer a response to your question, what the government should do, I believe the government should dismantle all these transnational agrobusiness corporations. Thank you.
Preferred occupation, and actually there have been recent surveys done on this, and 70% of the farmers, they are doing farming because they have no other way to live. They are forced to live it. If there is any opportunity, if they get a attendance job in a government office, they will give up for science farmers, without farmers. This is what I think is happening. Now, the only way to go about it is that we have to really radically shift the paradigm. We have to shift the paradigm, farmers, and bring back our agriculture back, and diversity in agriculture, bring back the food patterns that are changing also will come back to the traditional rich, nutritious food.
The amount of energy put into different types of food, that is a very important question. I don't have any simple solution to it. I think it has to do with consciousness raising, and we are talking more and more about ecological footprints, and I think there will in the future be some type of labeling on more and more food produce, showing how much energy has gone into that type of product, and that's the entitlement type of thinking of how much are we entitled to as persons, for instance, or CO2, for instance, is going to spill over also on food produce. There is an upcoming debate in my own country, for instance, on salmon, fish farming. A lot of energy is going into each and every one of these salmons, and it's not sustainable in the long run. And these type of debates would be driven by conscious consumers, first and foremost, I think.
Thank you, Richard. If you'd like to say something particularly about the fact that arable land is being used for animal feed and so on.
Yes, I can do. The fact that I didn't mention it doesn't mean that it's not important for us. But in a way, I had to focus. I wanted to focus on the potential and function of smallholder agriculture. Yes, of course, there's an unhealthy or an unsustainable competition between food, fuel, and feed in the world, and that's a big problem, and it has to be changed from the demand side as well as from the supply side. It's totally clear that there's too much meat consumption in the rich parts of the world, or also in the rich parts of all countries, and these changing food patterns, it's really, in the long run, it's a very difficult development or tendency that has to be turned around. And though that food is coming first, and then if there is additional land available or unused land available, of course, then also it's possible to produce other products that can be exported. But it has to be balanced, and it has to first to serve the poor and the hungry's needs before trade aspects are coming into the picture. Yeah, and the question about adaptation, better to talk about strategies of survival. Yes, you can say this, and I totally agree, but in a way, adaptation is also a convention, because we have these expressions of mitigation and adaptation, and okay, we stick to adaptations, even if it's in many cases really survival of the people, and not only, let's say, small adaptations because the circumstances are slightly changing. I totally agree, but okay, wording is not neutral, but on.
Yeah, my name is Piero Musini, and I come from Italy. I'm a farmer in Italy, an organic farmer, and I'm also involved with the international spiritual organization that is bringing a change in consciousness in the people. And I was just attending this talk on farming, and the point that I feel is very interesting is how the farming has to go back to a natural state of understanding the soil, the land, and producing local products. And what we are doing as our organization, the Brahma Kumaris in India, is trying to see and experimenting with universities how the awareness and the mindset and the thoughts of the people that are cultivating the land can induce in the seeds. And so the experiment is to meditate on the whole cycle of the seed and so the products, how that will enhance and will empower the natural elements to have better crops. And it's really interesting because it's a scientific research that is being done now for 2 years. It's a 5 years program, and it's really showing, as we know, because we've been meditating for many years, how the change in consciousness can really have an effect on matter. And since there is a say that we are what we eat, if we can eat a food that is peaceful, which is powerful, we of course can make a change in the world in that way.